Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren and today I'm going to be looking at a Lindsay Nikole video. This is Homo floresiensis. The Ancient Hobbit people. Don't know what to expect here, but we found some old bones, I'm imagining. Old bones. Hey, look, her shirt says bones on it. I didn't even notice that. Anyway. I'm looking forward to this. I enjoy my Lindsay Nikole videos, and this one seems like it's not going to be, usually the videos I watch from her are very much fully about animals. So I'm looking forward to this one. Let's go.
50,000 years ago, a small species of human lived in a cave tucked away on the island of Flores in Indonesia. They were 3 feet tall and seemed to live a much more primitive lifestyle than other human species alive at the time. They're called Homo floresiensis, also known as the Hobbit people. The Hobbit people had a strange mix of characteristics that made them vastly different from other human species, and their environment was equally as alien from the rest of the world. Although only bits of evidence have been found of their existence, and many aspects of their life are still a mystery, their fossils have led to massive debates on their origins. Today we'll be exploring them, specifically where they came from, how they got so small, and if they are possibly still alive.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna get the general information out of the way, this time by looking at the hominin family tree, which shows the major groups of hominins that have emerged since about 7 million years ago. That upper group in the tree represents the genus Homo, humans. This includes us, of course, Homo floresiensis, Neanderthals, Homo erectus, which we are thought to have evolved from, and a handful of other human species that were different from our own, many of which at some point existed at the same time as us. At the time that
I'm trying to remember, it's I remember Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and Australopithecus as well. You know, those are the ones that I remember. I think there's another 2 or 3 that we learned about in school, but those are the ones that those are the names that I recall.
Modern humans and Homo floresiensis were alive. I want to say there were 5 other human species hanging out in different parts of the world, which is pretty nuts. Some of which interacted with each other.
And only 50,000 years ago.
Unique environment to adapt to, and so had their own distinct set of traits.
I say only 50,000 years ago, but it feels like that wasn't that long ago to suddenly not have any of the other ones around.
Floresiensis is arguably the most unique though, and so come with a lot of questions. If you're even slightly familiar with the study of evolution, you know that shit is complete pandemonium. I spent hours going back and forth on what to include in the general information topic because it's really easy to go on tangents about how complicated this shit is. So to keep it simple, I'm gonna stop there. I want to do more videos on human evolution in the future, so I will keep the ranting for that. In summary, Homo floresiensis represents just one branch in the complex hominin family tree that has existed for about 7 million years. All right, I think we're ready to get into it. Let's do a little bit of lore. Back in the 1950s, Dutch scientists decided to go to Flores to look for early human traces, which turned out to be successful trips. They found things like stone artifacts with remains of stegodon, an extinct relative to elephants. So they decided to continue excavations on different parts of the island. And in 1965, they went to a massive cave called Leang Bua, which translates to cool cave. Absolutely fucking sick-ass cave.
Sick cave! I love it.
Traces of Homo sapiens from the early and late Stone Age, the Metal Age. They found human skeletons, evidence of deliberate burials, pottery, artifacts, etc. Clearly, Leang Bua played a big role for early humans on the island.
It is a cool cave.
Excavations continued here for decades. So at this point, scientists from all over the world.
I do love it when things are named it's just named what it is. It's a cool cave. We're gonna call it a cool cave. I think that's fun. I think let's do some of your favorite. What are some of your favorite translation names? You know, or it's where it's just named exactly what it is. I like bears are just bear. You know, I think that's kind of fun. It's it's a bear. It's because I think the reason is because we ultimately at one point lost the name for what people were calling. They didn't actually call it a bear. They called it the bear or the Ursa, whatever, because it translated out to, the killer in the night or something. And it's they didn't want to name it because that gave it extra power. Something like that. So it's just the bear.
Getting into this cave.
I might be fully wrong about that.
Shit. Not human shit. Cool fossil stuff. It was initially thought that the deeper layers that dated to the meat of the Pleistocene were going to be culturally sterile. No evidence of humans, as modern humans hadn't arrived there yet, that they knew of. But New Zealand archaeologist Mike Morwood disagreed. And despite bitter shit talking from the Dutch, ended up taking over the excavation projects. And it's a good thing he did. On September 2nd, 2003, Mike's team hit the top of a very small skull while digging. They initially thought they found the remains of a modern human child, managed to uncover leg bones and some arm bones of the same individual, and once the skull was cleaned, they looked at the molars and realized this child had fully developed adult teeth.
Wait a minute.
That's not a kid. That's something else. The team kept this discovery hidden from the public for about a year to study and figure out what the fuck they got going on. And in
right, just to see if it was just somebody who had different developmental physical traits, right? Like that could be also a thing.
2004, they published their findings. A new small-bodied hominin from the late Pleistocene of Flores, Indonesia. They named it Homo floresiensis, and it gagged the scientific community and even hit regular news networks. So it essentially went viral. So what were these traits that made Homo floresiensis such a big deal? Yes, they were small, and that was a big part of it. Fossil remains of multiple individuals that were found were on average about 1 meter tall, which is like the size of a modern human 5-year-old, just little guys. But that's not all. They also had a really unusual mix of more primitive and modern traits. They were bipedal, walked on 2 feet, like other species in the genus Homo, but they had more robust limb bones, longer arms, shorter legs, proportions similar to earlier hominins in the tree like Australopithecus, which our whole genus Homo is thought to have evolved from. Also,
I remembered Australopithecus.
Their legs were short and their feet were relatively long, which made their feet look even bigger. Big feet, big foot.
Hobbit feet?
Oh, shit.
But what
Big
was
hobbit
arguably
feet?
most perplexing about them
big
was
foot,
how
but-
small their brains were. Their cranial capacity was just a fraction of that of other species in the genus. Let me put it into perspective real quick. Let's say this bush represents the genus Homo. We've got Neanderthals over here, all right? They had an average cranial capacity of 1,500 cubic centimeters. Us, let's put us right. Let's put us right here. Sapiens. We have an average cranial capacity of 1,400 cubic centimeters. Yeah, Neanderthals had us beat on that one. The more you know.
Good job, Neanderthals.
Had a very long lifespan. They went from 700 cubic centimeters to 1,200 cubic centimeters in the time from 2 million to 500,000 years ago.
Whoa!
Where did hobbits fall onto this scale? They had a cranial capacity of 417 cubic centimeters. What the fuck? That's closer to some of the earliest hominin species like Sahelanthropus chidensis that was like 350 cubic centimeters and were alive like 7 million years ago. Absolutely baffling for a species that was only alive 50,000 years ago.
Wow.
Erase. So even though the hobbits were originally classified as their own species in the genus Homo in the original paper, this became a huge debate. This mix of characteristics would suggest extremely drastic evolutionary changes over a relatively short period of time.
I guess if they were just like always just in this cave, right? Like that's just where they were.
Some traits seemingly going backwards in evolution, which is not the correct way to look at it. Things don't go backwards in evolution, but like it seemingly went backwards in evolution. So many scientists weren't convinced that these anatomical pipsqueaks represented their own species. Some argued that maybe these fossils represented modern humans that suffered from some sort of abnormal condition. Microcephaly.
And they just like shoved all of them together in this cave? Like they were like, we don't want them. Put them in the cave. Put them into the cave with ye. I would have gone to the cave probably. My vision is so bad. Like, it's one of those things that I was like, I would have been damaged goods probably in the past.
Was proposed, which literally translates to small head, cephaly, head, if you remember from the two-headed snakes video, which, by the way, I got a two-headed snake tattoo. Laurent syndrome and Down syndrome were also thrown out there, but none of them totally made sense for the fossils and their proportions. There was also talk of maybe growth hormones being impacted by a lack of iodine in the environment, but nothing stuck because nothing completely fit as an explanation. Scientists who supported the new species idea held strong and argued that these seemingly unexplainable changes in their anatomy could be explained when you look at them in the context of their whole environment. That's right, bitches. Island rule. If you've never heard of island rule, you can kind of think of it as Mother Nature's way of saying fuck around and find out. Islands are where shit gets weird. In general, the smaller an island is, the weirder it gets, and the further it is from the mainland, the weirder it gets. That's the key. Flores just so happens to sit in an area called Wallacea, which is a group of islands that sit between Asia and Australia, and throughout geologic time have rarely or never been connected to the mainlands via land bridges. Land bridges happened with rising and falling sea levels during the ice ages, ice caps making shit melt, and led to a lot of different migration events, like the Bering Strait land bridge allowed humans to cross into North America.
So like with absolutely no ability to contact anybody that's not on your little island, how did they get there in the first place? Good question. Me But that is because like if they didn't have boats or something to make it easier to get to other places. Still asks, how did they get there in the first place?
But land bridges never really existed in Malaysia. Obviously, the ocean in between, let's say, Asia and Flores is pretty significant barrier for migration that most species aren't really capable of crossing. So when it does happen, it's very rare. And then once they're there, they're stuck. They're done. They're isolated. There's no migration interact. This creates an environment that is drastically different than the one on the mainland. The resources are different, interactions with different species are different, maybe fewer or no predators, less competition, and the populations are genetically isolated. There's no migration interact. So over generations, their evolution goes nuts. All of them. It's like the Wild West. Allow me to introduce you to a few of these evolutionary experiments the hobbits lived with. A giant stork called Leptotylos robustus. They got to about 6.5 feet tall.
Wow!
It was twice the size of a hobbit. That's fucking terrifying. Fossil evidence suggests they were able to fly, despite their size. So they were likely in direct competition with the hobbits for food, which would have sucked for the hobbits. Those
big
odds
yikes.
suck. Dude, imagine if seagulls were twice your size. You would absolutely let them take your sandwich on the beach.
Yep.
Also pygmy elephants that evolved from stegodon. They're estimated to have been about 650 pounds, which is very small for an elephant. Asian elephants are like over 6,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So, little teeny. I've talked about a different pygmy elephant before in my cutest extinct animals video, the Sicilian pygmy elephant. They got really small over a relatively small number of generations. This has just happened a couple times with elephants and their relatives. And cut marks in the bones of dwarf stegodon suggest the hobbits ate them. Komodo dragons also lived and still live on the island of Flores. Obviously, they're very big and pose a real threat to those pint-sized hobbits. I mean, they were the length of 3 hobbits laying down, dude.
Holy shit.
That's a threat. That is a predator. There were
poor
also,
hobbits.
and still are, giant rats. Some the size of rabbits. Many species.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I don't want an ROUS. I'm not even like afraid of rats. I even kind of like rats. That is too big for a rat.
These of varying sizes that the hobbits ate. So clearly they lived in their own little world with animals that interacted in different ways than usual and thus created an ecosystem unlike any other on the planet. For them, adapting to these unique conditions meant changes in their energy requirements, which led to shifts in the way their bodies use energy over time. For some reason, well, actually multiple reasons, it was beneficial for the ancestors of the hobbits to become small.
Well, I mean, I guess like less energy to move the body, but also you could hide better, maybe like sneaky. If all these things are huge, they're maybe less likely to look at you if you're smaller. I don't know.
Over time, including their brain capacity, which might not make sense right off the bat. Like, the brain is so useful. Why would you want it to shrink and not work as well, theoretically? Okay, so obviously, in order for your body to function properly, it needs a certain amount of energy that comes from food. If you're on an island with limited resources, hitting that energy requirement might be tough. And nervous tissue, brain tissue, is extremely energetically expensive, uses a shit ton of energy. So if the new environment doesn't require that much brain power, maybe there are no predators that you have to look out for and other factors, it makes sense to reduce the energy cost by decreasing the amount of nervous tissue, i.e. brain gets smaller. No need expensive brain, making it seem like they were
no need
a more
expensive
primitive
brain
condition, but they were actually just adapting to their unique environment. It really serves as a reminder that evolution has no goal. There's no end goal. The goal isn't to be the most intelligent or the most whatever. It's just to survive in the environment you exist in. And intelligence...
to be the best adapted. And I guess, okay, I don't usually think about intelligence as not being always something useful, but apparently...
doesn't really have anything to do with that. Long story short, island ecosystems are weird as fuck. Weird shit happens, and Homo floresiensis is just an example of that. I actually got a lot of this information from this paper. It covered what island rule looked like for all the animals on Flores, went way more in detail than I did. I'll put the link in the description in case you want to check it out. It was a really cool read. They also included this short section on how they think each of the animals got to the island of Flores, what those migration looked like, since those animals that lived on Flores must have crossed the water barrier somehow. Yes. They proposed swimming for elephants and lizards, floating for tortoises, and rafting for rats and hominins. They also suggested tsunamis might have played a role too, which makes sense for that region. Okay, so who were the ancestors?
See, that's what I asked earlier. How did they get there? Rafting. Okay. Yeah, and I guess it's like, that trip sucked. I don't want to make it again. And now we're here.
Floresiensis. Where did they come from? This is still a huge debate. Everything's still a big debate. Because like I said, right now, there's only a handful of evidence of their existence in general, let alone who they evolved from. So scientists are currently really basing it on the fossil evidence of the ancestral candidates. The most widely accepted idea right now is that they represent a dwarfed species of Homo erectus. Homo erectus was an insanely successful species.
Yeah.
They were around for like 1.5 million years.
Holy shit.
And like I mentioned earlier, are considered the ancestors to Neanderthals, Homo sapiens, us, as well as other species in the
Right? He is the, I guess, the epitome of humanity.
genus Homo. They had a pretty large geographic range too. They migrated out of Africa, spread to Eurasia, and then into Indonesia, and existed there in modified forms until like 100,000 years ago. It seems most likely that one...
I love how like sassy this guy looks. He's like, yes. Do tell me about your terrible day, Janice. Did your child load the dishwasher incorrectly? Oh, do tell, Janice. Like, I love him.
Population somehow got to the island of Flores and got isolated there. The problem that scientists have pointed out with this specific idea is that so many aspects of Homo floresiensis are much more primitive than Homo erectus. The paper I just mentioned does support the Homo erectus origin idea, but as far as I can tell, it's still on shaky ground. Not everyone has reached that consensus yet. Some scientists think the step backward is too big of a jump for it to have started from Homo erectus, but it's still the most accepted explanation, because the other option is even more shaky, that Homo floresiensis evolved from a different Homo species, more primitive than Homo erectus, Homo habilis, the handyman. That was in Africa about 2 million years ago. Maybe they slowly left Africa with populations expanding and eventually reaching Flores. That would explain the more primitive features of the hobbits.
But also like,
but there's
crazy, but really, really, really hard for them to get there.
Absolutely no evidence that Homo habilis ever left Africa that we know of. So where they came from is still a mystery, but is there a possibility that they're still alive? Apparently, multiple different groups of people that are from the island of Flores have these stories of ape men that they claim are still around and seen on very rare occasion. They're described as something like human that walk on 2 legs, but are different than modern humans, and described with more ape-like features, like more hairy, but are different than the monkeys that exist on the islands, like the long-tailed macaques. Locals say the ape men live in highland forests, away from humans, and have occasionally stolen crops and maybe chickens. They don't describe much else about them, nothing about their social life, culture, and they seem to be just kind of considered a nuisance to the locals, nothing more aggressive than that. And it's like, based on the way they talk about them, the interactions seem to have happened recently, not necessarily passed down as legends from generations ago. But it's impossible to say for sure.
Right, and it could just be like something like that is pretty easy to be like just passed off, you know. It's like, oh, we have these local legends, I'm gonna steal my neighbor's chicken, you know. And it's like, oh, I saw the little ape man, you know. It's like, those are things that kind of could be faked, but it's kind of cool to have like the idea that they're still out there, that they did manage to survive.
They've never been captured on camera, which I guess makes sense for isolated populations. But even with the research teams on the islands that have been there for decades that do have the technology, they have never been documented. So are they still alive? There's no evidence, only stories that could possibly be misinterpreted. So it would be...
Again, though, like I'm saying, it is possible. There are certain species, I mean, they discover new species all the time, but like they have, like there's like that's one species of like a wildcat or something that everyone thought was extinct because no one saw it for like 30 years. But then one day one was captured on film somewhere and it was like, oh, it's not an extinct species. So I'm just saying, like, there are quite a few species of animals out there that like we don't know exist, and they have managed to avoid being caught on film. Like, they don't know what film is, but like they still managed to avoid it. I don't know. I'm just saying it is interesting because it is possible, unlikely probably, but possible.
Extremely unlikely, but I guess it does leave room for imagination.
It does.
We've seen countless times in science, crazy shit gets discovered a lot.
I just said that.
I tend to lean on the side of they're not alive anymore. They are very, very, very likely extinct. So if they are extinct, what happened to them? That's kind of up for debate as well, because again, the amount of evidence that exists right now is like not enough to say for sure. But there's
I mean, it seems like the kind of thing too where they can't really change the gene pool. You know, it's hard to grow your species if everything is just in one. Like, I feel like that is going to kill off your crew at some point or another. Like, if there's 100 people and like that's it, you do not have very much long before suddenly everyone's marrying their brother, and then you start getting some weird genetic stuff, and then that I think makes a lot of sense to me anyway, in my non-science having brain.
A few different possibilities. Based on the fossil evidence, Homo floresiensis was alive between 100,000 to 50,000 years ago ish. Honestly, there were like multiple numbers I saw at different sources, but it generally seems that the revised consensus is 100,000 to 50,000 years ago. That 50,000 years ago lines up with the arrival of modern humans to Southeast Asia. Maybe the hobbits were outcompeted by modern humans and eventually died off because they couldn't coexist. Or maybe humans killed them and it was more barbaric. There's no evidence of that at all. No evidence of the species ever interacting that we know of. So it's all speculation. It's also possible they went extinct completely on their own, maybe due to a volcanic eruption or a natural disaster. Until more fossils are found, this and many aspects of the hobbits will remain a mystery. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next long form video, the first episode of the History of Life series. Finally, and merch is on the way too. You already know what the fuck is going on. You can keep up with my short form content on TikTok and Instagram. Check out my Patreon for live streams and the Discord server. And for now, stay curious. The world has a lot for us to learn.
I love mysteries. They're so cool. I had never heard of that before. Oh, that's really sick. I like that. All right. Okay. Okay. Little Hobbit people. I don't think they're still around. It seems unlikely. It's just fun that there are still rumors and stories. I think that's really cool. I hope they find more proof. I hope they find more evidence. I really hope that this is something that we look into a little bit more. It's kind of cool. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what I should react to next in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm giving Lindsay a little like, and I'll see you all in the next one.